Joining us now on Washington Journal from Florida in West Palm Beach, Representative Lois Frankel, Democrat from Florida, member of the Appropriations Committee. Thank you, Representative, for giving us your time today.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
There is currently the work to pass the president's plan for COVID relief. Can you talk about the Appropriations Committee's role in that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's an honor to serve on that committee. We do not have a direct link to the bill because the bill does go through various substantive committees. But of course, our work previously, there will be allocations to each of the issues. So, for example, there'll be more money, obviously, for vaccine distribution, for child care, for education. So a lot of the relief that will be in this package are issues that we have discussed many times in the Appropriation Committee.
And so from the larger issue of the package that's being considered by all Democrats is this idea of $1,400 so that we could, for per person, and the debate about eligibility. Where do you stand on that, and should an eligibility be lowered for that?
Well, keep in mind that that $1,400 is a very important part of a very, very big package. So you have to look at the package as a whole and look at where our economy is. We are very close, as hundreds and hundreds of economists have told us, to a severe recession that we may not emerge out of for a long time. And so this package as a whole is designed really to keep our economy going until we can crush this virus and get everybody back to work. So you have to look at it in that way, not necessarily pitting family against family. It's about putting enough money back into our economy so that it'll work.
Our guest will be with us, and if you want to ask her questions concerning the president's plan for relief and other issues related to that, Representative Lois Frankel, our guest, Democrat from Florida, and she'll take your questions on it. If you want to call 202-748-8000, one for Republicans, 202-748-8000 for Democrats, and Independents, 202-748-8002. Representative Frankel, as far as the package overall, which you referenced, a debate about the total price tag, particularly being brought forth by the Republicans. I want to play a little bit from the Ways and Means Committee, top Republican Kevin Brady, what he said about the COVID relief plan overall, and then get your comments on that.
Sides of the aisle, including President Obama's economic advisor, agree targeted is the right way to go. This nearly $2 trillion stimulus package is neither targeted nor a stimulus. We repeatedly asked the White House a simple question: how many jobs will this stimulus create? Repeatedly, the Biden administration ducked this important question, still refusing to provide an official answer. Whatever this rushed, partisan special interest stimulus package does, it comes with no bipartisan discussion, no opportunity for finding common ground, and no credible estimates of jobs.
Representative Frankel, what do you think about those assessments from Kevin Brady?
Well, let me not give my own personal assessment, but I can say this. As I said, many economists agree that bold and urgent action is needed. And if we don't enact this package now, we're told that we could end up with 4 million fewer jobs this year, and it'll take much longer to reach a full employment. And think about what's happening to our young people who may have lower lifetime earnings because they're deprived of another semester of school. And what's happening to women, in a sense, we call this a she-cession because this pandemic has disproportionately affected women and their families. The childcare industry has been fairly decimated. And so mothers who usually have the responsibility of taking care of family, they can't go back to work even if they have a job.
To that end, the overall package from the Ways and Means Committee being discussed includes money, particularly to child care, to the tune of almost $40 billion to those providers. Can you explain what that would do?
Well, it's what's happened is we are now seeing some of the real structural flaws of our economy because the child care industry has been very fragile. Why has it been very fragile? The cost of child care is very expensive for families, especially since it's usually young families who are just starting their own earning careers. The child care workers are paid very, very little money, not what they are worth. And so it's a very fragile system that has been hit very hard by this pandemic. The $40 billion, yes, it'll buck up some of the industry. It will go, obviously, for some infrastructure, for paying people, but it's just a start of what we need to do, because child care really is one of the most important tools for families, for mothers and fathers to be able to go to work while their young children stay in safe, learning, nurturing environments. And so this, to me, is a first step in this package. When we get on to either our next relief package or our general appropriations bill, we have got to pour much more money into the child care system, as I said, so that children get off to a good start, parents can get back to work.
To that end, it's an overall relief package, the debate going on currently about raising the minimum wage to $15. Where do you fall on that, and what case would you make for or against that?
Well, I have spent most of my career really trying to advance women and girls. Although I will say, as a disclaimer, I have a wonderful son and a beautiful grandson. And I want my grandson to grow up and have the same rights as every little girl. But women have really been left behind in the economy, earn 60 cents. These are women of color earning 60 cents on the dollar for men, women earning 80 cents on the dollar for men in some instances. So what we need to do is make sure that anybody who works, anybody who spends 8 hours at a job, makes enough money to put bread on the table, to pay their rent. And so minimum wage, to me, even getting to the $15 an hour, by the time we get there, that's probably not going to be enough. But no one should have to work 2 or 3 jobs in order to take care of their families.
You probably will get asked, or at least could factor in the recent CBO report looking at the potential impact of that $15, especially those potential job losses, even though some would still be able to be risen out of poverty. How do you justify those two sides?
Well, I do think that there's a lot of criticism of that CBO report as to whether it's really based on current data. So, but putting that aside, I would say this again: if you're a decent, hardworking person, you shouldn't have to work 2 or 3 jobs to take care of your family. Raising this minimum wage is not only important for millions of families in our country, but to me, it's the moral thing to do.
Representative Lois Frankel, Democrat from Florida, joining us on Zoom from West Palm Beach here to take your questions. Gary, Jacksonville, Florida, Democrats line. You are first for our guests. Go ahead.
Good morning. Ms. Frankel, my question is, when Pete Buttigieg testified for the state of the infrastructure, our country was rated a D- as far as the development. I'm very concerned about where has the money for toll roads gone to that was supposed to pay for new roads and new improvements in infrastructure? How is that monitored, and how is it let to be in this state, and how are we going to get the money to improve in this matter? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your question. And you're up there in Jacksonville. I know that for those of us here in Florida, especially in the larger urban environments, it's hard to find a road that's not crowded today. Here's what we know is that we need to invest in our infrastructure, not only roads and bridges, but our technical infrastructure, our water infrastructure. And we need to do it in a way where we are developing new jobs, green jobs. And so a part of the process as we look to develop this legislation, we will have to figure out where the source of money is going to come from. It's not going to come from the toll roads, but the gas will be evaluated to see if that's the right way to go. There'll be many sources of dollars in order to fund our infrastructure package. But in the long run, it's going to more than pay for itself as we produce millions of new jobs.
The president, the vice president, and Transportation Secretary Buttigieg set to meet today with Senate leaders on both sides on the issue of infrastructure. Larry in Alton, Illinois, Republican line. Hello.
Hello. Good morning, Pedro. Good morning, Congresswoman Frankel. Hats off to the Democrat Party. I was just wondering on appropriations if you could mention how much money is spent in the public school system per pupil versus the outcomes and what we're actually in our inner cities getting for our money, our tax dollars is being spent. I had a couple other things I was wanting to speak about, but really I just want to congratulate the Democrat Party on what all happened during the election. I thought it was brilliant. Thank you.
Sir, thank you for calling from Illinois. I hope it's not too cold where you are today. You know, your question really signifies, I think, what parents feel all over this country. And I know my son went to the public schools here in Palm Beach County, and I can't wait till my grandson does the same. The education of our children is a high priority for most families. I will say all families, and so it's important that we put the resources into our educational system. Now, your question really as to how much each pupil gets really is dependent upon the state where they live. The federal government, we will send money back to state governments for various programs, but it is mostly the state budgets, whether it's the state taxes or the local taxes that are funding the education system, and it is the state legislatures in most areas that are determining how much each pupil gets, or how much is spent for each pupil.
To that end, Representative Frankel, there's a story being made today in several papers taking a look at schools, saying that the president made the promise to reopen a majority of K-8 schools in his first 100 days, now saying the pledge means opening more than 50% of schools for in-person teaching at least one day a week. Are you concerned about this change? And overall, what do you think has to happen, at least from the federal government, to ensure more schools do open?
Well, I do think that getting schools open as quickly as possible is a priority, but it has to be done safely, of course. I think the research is showing that for most children, they do better when they are actually in school. But not only that, their parents do better too when their children are in school. So there's a lot of a domino effect. But when children have to be home virtually, so listen, the president. I want to be as respectful as possible. You know, I'm not bashing the last administration, although I could probably all day. The President Biden, let's have an analogy. He inherited a car without any gas. The work that the past administration had done in crushing the virus and getting kids ready to go back to school, it's just, as I said, left the car on empty. So I believe the President Biden is finding things not to be as he expected, as bad as he expected. But listen, I have a lot of confidence. Are we going to get this COVID package passed soon? I hope that will infuse billions of dollars, not only into getting supplies for the vaccines, for getting more testing, for getting distribution, but billions of dollars into our school systems that'll help schools open safely. And that should be a very big priority for all of us.
From Teresa, Hayward, California, Democrats line. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Ms. Frankel. How are you today?
Good morning.
Thank you. I'm calling to ask about, had anybody put in the idea of the cost of people that had to bury their family and the cost that may have accrued from the ice boxes being outside these funeral homes. And people, everybody that passed probably didn't have a life insurance, so we have to deal with that. And then also the $1,400, all the kids have been home. They've all grown out of their clothes. So when we got to send our kids back to school, they're going to need new clothes. Thank you, Ms. Frankel. Can you talk about that?
Well, thank you. You know, your question itself really it says so much about how heartbreaking this pandemic has been. So many loved ones lost, not even to have a proper burial, as you mentioned. You're right. Children are growing up at home virtually, and parents are out of work, and things that we thought were very simple, like let's go buy the new school clothes for the year. Parents not even able to afford that. So, as to the question about the burial expenses and so forth, there actually is legislation being filed by Chuck Schumer and AOC to deal with those particular expenses. We, of course, in our COVID package, are going to send, again, money back to hospitals, to cities and states that can help them deal with a lot of these extraneous issues that have arisen due to the pandemic.
Representative Frankel, you've added to your portfolio recently. You've just been named to the House Veterans Affairs Committee. What do you hope to do in the committee? What kind of influence would you like to have?
Well, thank you so much for that question. You can sort of see over this shoulder here, I'm pointing my finger. That's my son, Ben. He was I'm very proud of him. He was in the United States Marines for 8 years, served both in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's him in his gear back there. My family's blessed. He returned safely. He assimilated into civilization, I would say into normal life, and has a family and a business, and he's doing well. But sadly, too many veterans are coming. They've come back either with post-traumatic stress disorder or disabilities, find themselves either homeless, sometimes suicidal, lots of issues in terms of being able to get back into the mainstream of society. And I understand the patriotism, the sacrifice of all these men and women who go in whole. They go into the military. They really are willing to give up everything, including their lives, to protect our freedoms. And so, to me, it is a moral imperative, and not only that, it is a security imperative that we do everything to make sure that our veterans are properly cared for and have the opportunity to have successful civilian lives when they leave the military. And so, for me, being on this appointment to the Veterans Committee is an honor. The first thing I will focus on, and I'm sure that's not a surprise, is to make sure that that veterans who are age eligible, for example, are able to have access to the COVID vaccines. That's something that we get a lot of calls for in my office. I'm also very, very interested in making sure that especially those who want to continue their education have the tools that they need to pick up where they left before they went into the military.
Have you had a chance to talk with the president's new VA secretary, Dennis McDonough, and what would you like him to focus on?
Well, I've talked to him, but not in his current position. I talked to him obviously when he was in the Obama administration. No, I haven't. I think he was just confirmed a day or two, and so we're giving most of these new appointees some time to get themselves confirmed. But the first thing I would talk to him about would be how we are dealing with the distribution of the COVID vaccine for these veterans, and also the testing and the treatment for COVID. I think that is our biggest focus right now. But we'll move on to lots of other issues.
Representative Lois Frankel joining us from Florida for this discussion. Melissa in Iowa, in Bloomfield. In line, thanks for waiting. Go ahead.
Hi, Mrs. Frankel. Thanks for being with us today and everything. I appreciate it. And I really appreciated how you said that the veterans and the COVID is really important and everything. But I guess my major question is if our veterans and the COVID is so important, why are we sending so much money overseas instead of spending the money here in the United States?
Well, first of all, thank you for your question, and thank you for your caring of our veterans. So, that's a question we get asked a lot. We actually use a very, very small percentage of our dollars to go overseas. But I'll tell you, my son, as I told you, who was a United States Marine for 8 years, and he would be the first one to say to you that he'd rather us spend $1 or more to keep people educated in another country or make sure they have access to health care, because that actually is a way to keep us having to use our military to go overseas to fight a battle. And let me give you another example. And really COVID is the perfect example. I know the United States, we're surrounded by water, right? But the fact of the matter is, there's an old saying, which is we're not really an island because we don't keep people out. And we've seen how COVID crossed the ocean to get to our country. And so it's very, very important. We saw that with Ebola. So it's very, very important that we make sure not only that we're keeping people here safe and healthy, but we do what we can it's not a lot of money, but we do what we can to keep people healthy in other countries.
Traverse City, Michigan, Democrats line. Sue, good morning.
Good morning. I would like Ms. Frankel to address the fact that we can't trust our leadership in either party anymore because they're both run by corporations. And as a result, we don't ever see public policy benefiting the American people. The American people, Republican and Democrat, are very aware of this and watching this whole thing go down. I'm a former Democrat, former progressive, and former Bernie bro, and I want you to know that I do not approve of what I see happening right now in Washington, D.C. on any level with both parties.
Okay, that's Sue. Go ahead. Ms. Frankel, go ahead.
Well, that's a pretty broad statement. Lou, listen, I think you're expressing a frustration that many people have. And let me just tell you one thing that Democrats are trying to get passed in the House that I think you would appreciate. And that is, we call it H.R. 1. What do we call H.R. 1? It's the first bill that we focused on last session and now this. And that is, part of it is to make sure we have clean government and access to elections. And a big part of that bill is to make sure that there's no more secret contribution, that all money going into political campaigns, that the donors are disclosed. I think that would be a very, very important thing we can do. The bill calls for redistricting panels so that we don't have partisan drawing of lines, and some new ethical guidelines. So that kind of legislation that goes towards clean government, I think will resolve some of the issues that you raise. And I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of what's going on. I think it's very obviously these impeachment proceedings and what we have seen happened at the Capitol on January 6th and the days leading up to that will go down as in history as a very, very sad and mark for our nation.
What's your remembrance of that day? Were you present at the Capitol during those events?
Well, myself and another colleague, yes, we were in a lounge in the Capitol, and we barricaded ourselves in a small room for about 5 hours while this happened. I'll tell you, this film footage is so shocking to me. I'm just glad I was not able to see it while I was in that room, because I think I would have obviously been horrified. But what is most shocking and horrifying to me is what happened to our Capitol Police. And, this is anecdotal, but this really happened. Maybe 10 minutes before we got our alert to hide, I was in the Capitol, and I went up to a Capitol policewoman, and I said to her, I was told to take my member pin off so I couldn't be identified. Are we in danger? And I'll never forget her words. She says, "Don't worry, you're safe. We have your back." And this was someone standing guard at the door. And it wasn't 10 minutes later that I heard this alert that said, take cover, lock the door, stay away from the windows, get your gas mask. And then we had this mob attack on the Capitol. And what happened to these fine Capitol Police who were there to protect us is horrifying to me. It's just horrifying.
One more call from Jack in Iowa and Davenport, Democrats line.
Good morning. I have 3 observations. In an office I worked in, I saw one man unpack boxes, but when women did the same job, it took 2 women. That suggests to me that women only do half the work men do. In the state of Illinois, men are expected to carry 90 pounds of food in food services, but women only 60 pounds. Women don't carry the same workload. No woman registers for the draft at age 18. Only men register. Isn't the real problem discrimination against men?
Okay, leave it there. Representative, you can answer if you wish.
Well, thank you. Listen, I think it's a moral imperative, and it's actually law in this country that men and women are paid equally for doing the same job. That is the law. I'm not really sure about this, the job you are actually talking about, but both men and women are now obviously eligible for the military. We have many women in the military, and we have millions and millions of women who are taking care of their families. So it is, as I said, morally and economically imperative for this country that anybody who goes to work gets paid what they are worth. And so, that is something I have pushed for my entire public life, and I will continue to do so.
Representative Frankel, in the area that you live, there's a debate going on locally on whether President Trump should be able to be a resident at Mar-a-Lago. Have you weighed in on this and had any input on this?
Well, fortunately, that's not in my bailiwick. I do believe the town council's lawyer ruled that because he is an employee of Mar-a-Lago, I guess he walks around and greets everybody, that he is allowed to stay as a resident of the club. Listen, I think this is where he's going to live. I just hope that he lives here. If this is where he wants to live, that he lives here peacefully, and that his neighbors are respectful of him and he's respectful of his neighbors.
Representative Lois Frankel serves on the Appropriations Committee, just appointed to the House Veterans Affairs Committee, Democrat from Florida. Thanks for your time on the program today.